Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This is the first cooking video for 2022. I'm going to be doing a lot of cooking videos, and I'm basically going to go and walk out into the garden, pick what's fresh, and I'm going to make something with it in the kitchen. Fresh, typically, in this case, frozen. So last Saturday we had a snow, and all these vegetables that I'm going to show you can take a freeze, can take a frost, but now it's going into the 6th, 7th day of really cold temperatures that have gotten down into the teens. So a lot of my broccoli and my cold weather crops that can take a frost typically are starting to freeze. So I'm going to harvest them. They're going to be a little bit soft, but I'm going to harvest some broccoli, some turnips, and I'm going to use potatoes from the store. And if you get in here, the broccoli is still a little bit firm, but it is frozen solid. So I'm just going to cut through it, hopefully pretty easily. And I'm going to take this inside. That'll be number one. And then there's a nice broccoli over here. And you can see, frozen solid. Hopefully I can cut through this. It was 17 degrees last night. And that's going to be the broccoli portion of the broccoli, turnip, and potato soup. We'll start with some onions. We'll use chicken stock, and I'm going to get in here, and these are turnips that are frozen solid, but they will work too. Because we're going to puree them down, just consider the garden with, you know, frozen vegetables as your natural freezer. So we got a couple of turnips, we have the broccoli, and we're just going to do it in equal portions of potato, equal portions of broccoli, equal portions of turnip. I'm going to saute some onions, soften them, and then I'll show you how I make a basic soup. So your cool weather crops can get hit pretty nicely by a pretty good freeze, but as long as it warms up the next day, they get several days of pretty decent temperature, they're going to be okay. It's when you get that prolonged freeze, and that's what we're getting here now in Maryland in January. So I really got to use up my 2021 garden. Going to make soup out of this, obviously, and then, you know, subscribe and follow me, because I'm starting to start seeds indoors, and I'll start the spring garden as soon as March. So this is certainly the winter version of the soup. Everything is frozen. This is wonderful. Late spring, early summer, use the same ingredients. So the turnips are still frozen, but they've cleaned up nicely. I'm going to cut these up, and when you're doing equal parts, it's basically nothing more than really making sure you chop them into the similar size, use the same type of container. So it'll be equal parts potato, the turnips will go in there, and also the broccoli. I'm going to saute the onions first until they're translucent, and then I'm going to add in the rest of the ingredients. I'm also going to use 2 cloves of garlic, but I'm not going to put this in until the end, really, when the broth comes to a boil. So I'm going to use chicken broth, pre-made. You can make your own stock if you want. You can use beef stock, you can use vegetable stock, whatever you want to use. But equal portions, just cut them up to the same size, and you can approximate equal portions. 3 parts, potatoes, broccoli, and turnips. You want to use the flower heads. If you get some of the stem, that's fine, but there's a chance that the further you go down away from the blooms of the broccoli, that the stem can be kind of tough. But this is it. Pretty much equal parts. The onion goes in there with some oil. You want to kind of saute this, cook it on medium-low. You don't want it to brown. And when they're nice and clear, that's when you're ready to put in all the ingredients. Once all the ingredients are in, we're going to put in chicken stock. That's about 2 quarts. Because this is not a reduction, which means we're not taking the volume and dropping it down like if we're making a tomato sauce, we can go ahead and season it now with salt. So a nice big pinch of salt, 2 of them, goes in there now. The reason you can put the salt in now is because, again, you're not doing that reduction. If you salt something to taste like a tomato sauce when it's up to here, and it tastes great with salt and pepper and all that, but then you reduce it down, it's going to become so salty you're not going to like it. So you have to pay attention to when you can put salt into your different soups that you're making. See if I can do this one-handed. If I can do it one-handed, you can certainly make this. So the turnips go in, the potatoes go in, not one spilled, and then the broccoli will go in, and I'm going to have to do that by hand, so I will cut from there and just put that in, and then we'll put it in the liquid. So everything is in there, and there's actually 2.5 quarts of chicken stock in there. You want it to come, you want the stock, the water, the liquid to come just above whatever ingredients you have in there, and it's going to vary based on, you know, how much you decided to cook. Turn it up to medium-high heat. You want this to get to a nice rolling simmer, boil, whatever. You're just going to cook this until it's all soft. Then we're going to put the immersion blender in right there, puree it through. You want to have a little bit of extra chicken stock. You don't want this to kind of be pasty. You want it to be more soup-like. So you're not going to really know until you finally puree it and see what's going on. I like putting in the garlic after everything has been heated through. I just like the flavor a little bit better. We'll toss this in just before we puree it with the immersion blender. But this is it. I mean, pretty simple. It's going to be delicious. And now I just let it boil for a bit until it's soft. I just wanted to show you how good this looks. It hasn't even come to a boil yet, but it's hard to believe. The turnips, the broccoli were frozen solid. They look, you know, absolutely delicious. Everything's soft to the touch. It takes about 10-15 minutes or so. And now I'm going to add in some actually crushed red pepper, my 2 garlic cloves now, and 3 tablespoons of butter. Now the pot, you know, I'm really almost coming to the top of this pot. You could use a pot that's larger, but in something this size, 3 tablespoons of butter. You can always add more butter or less butter. Sink it down, and this is soft enough for the immersion blender. And just pulse it a few times, get it going, and soon this will be a puree. And this is a perfect puree. I'm going to let this cool for about an hour. The heat's off, just let it cool down. You could also serve this cold, but I really like the consistency, not too thick, and I think this is going to be delicious. I just came outside to get some rosemary tips for the final plating, but I just wanted to show you where we started. You know, that's one of my herb towers, but we just pulled some broccoli and turnips right out of the snow, and I think the soup's going to be absolutely delicious. It smells wonderful. The only thing I'm going to add to it, I just tasted it, is another pinch of salt, but besides that, it's good to go. Turnip, potato, broccoli soup, final plating. That's Parmesan cheese, some rosemary, a little bit more of the red pepper, and I think this looks really good from where we started. Subscribe and I'll show you how to not only grow a garden, but some basic ways that you can cook with everything that you're growing. Thanks for watching, and please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com.